The transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a shudder that Jake Morrison felt in his bones. Through the viewport, the Zenthari Imperial Station hung in space like a massive jewel. It was easily 50 times larger than any human-built structure. Lights glowed across its surface, in patterns that hurt to look at for too long. Impressive, isn't it? Lieutenant Lisa Carter said from the co-pilot seat. She'd been quiet for most of the 3-day journey, reviewing diplomatic protocols and Zenthari customs, until Jake thought her head might explode from all the rules. "It's big," Jake said. He didn't like giving the aliens more credit than that. Earth had only made contact with the Zenthari Empire 2 years ago, and in that time, humanity had learned one important lesson. The Empire thought humans were barely worth noticing. The communication panel beeped. A harsh voice filled the cabin, speaking in the clicking, grinding language of the Zenthari. The translation software kicked in a second later. "Human vessel. You are cleared for docking bay 773. Do not deviate from the assigned flight path. Do not activate any weapons systems. Do not broadcast on any frequency. Compliance is mandatory." Lisa leaned over and muted the channel. "They think we're primitives," Jake said, guiding the ship toward the designated docking bay. "To them, we're like children who just learned to walk. Are we going to change their minds? Probably not today." Jake checked the scanner readouts. Dozens of ships surrounded the station, representing species from across this section of the galaxy. Most of them had been traveling between stars when Earth was still figuring out the wheel. "But we're going to try." The docking procedure took 20 minutes. Zenthari efficiency meant everything happened exactly on schedule, with no room for delays or mistakes. When the airlock finally opened, Jake and Lisa stepped into a corridor that made human architecture look like crude cave drawings. The walls seemed to shift colors as they walked. The floor absorbed sound so completely that their footsteps made no noise. Lights appeared wherever they moved, then faded behind them. Everything was designed to remind visitors that the Zenthari were more advanced, more sophisticated, more everything. A guide waited for them at the end of the corridor. He was Zenthari, standing nearly 8 feet tall with scales that shimmered between blue and purple. 4 arms hung at his sides, each one thick with muscle. His face was angular and sharp, with eyes that reflected light like a cat's. "I am Drex," the alien said. His voice came out in a low rumble that the translation device struggled to process. "I will escort you to the negotiation chamber. Follow. Do not touch anything. Do not speak to anyone. Do not photograph anything. Charming," Lisa muttered under her breath, too quiet for the translator to pick up. They walked for what felt like miles through corridors filled with aliens of every description. Most ignored the humans completely. A few stared with what Jake interpreted as curiosity or contempt. One creature that looked like a floating jellyfish actually laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The negotiation chamber was enormous. The ceiling stretched up at least 100 feet, covered in displays showing star maps and data streams. A long table dominated the center of the room, with seats sized for various species. At the far end, elevated on a platform that made her position clear, sat Princess Kayla Vorthine. Jake had seen pictures, but they hadn't prepared him for meeting her in person. She was smaller than most Zenthari, only about 7 feet tall, but she carried herself like she owned the universe. Her scales were deep crimson, a color that supposedly indicated royal blood. All 4 arms were decorated with golden bands that caught the light. Her eyes fixed on Jake, with the intensity of a predator sizing up prey. "The humans have arrived," she said. Her voice was cold and sharp. "How disappointing. I expected you to be taller." Lisa stiffened beside him, but Jake kept his expression neutral. This was a test. Everything with the Zenthari was a test. "Your Highness," Jake said, giving a slight bow. Not too deep, which would show weakness, but enough to acknowledge her position. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "I agreed to nothing." Kayla said. She gestured with one hand, and holographic documents appeared in the air above the table. My father, the Emperor, commanded this meeting. I am here out of duty, not desire. Let us complete this tedious business quickly. Jake walked to the table and began reviewing the treaty terms. Each line made his jaw tighten a little more. The Zenthari wanted exclusive rights to mine 3 asteroid fields in human space. They wanted free passage through all Earth shipping lanes. They wanted access to human genetic databases and medical research. In exchange, they offered almost nothing. Some outdated star drive components, limited access to one trading post, protection from potential threats, which Jake knew meant protection from threats the Empire itself might pose. These terms are unacceptable, Jake said. The room went silent. Even the other Zenthari officials present seemed shocked that he'd spoken so directly. Kayla leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Unacceptable? You are in no position to negotiate, human. The Empire offers you a generous opportunity to join galactic civilization. You should be grateful. Grateful. Jake felt his temper rising but kept it under control. You're asking us to give up sovereignty over our own space and resources. That's not a treaty. That's surrender. Perhaps surrender is all your species deserves, Kayla said. Your technology is primitive. Your military is a joke compared to the Imperial fleet. You have nothing we need and nothing we fear. Lisa put a hand on Jake's arm, a warning to stay calm. He ignored it. If you think we're so weak, Jake said, why bother with a treaty at all? Why not just take what you want? Kayla smiled, showing teeth that were definitely designed for tearing meat. Because my father believes in following proper procedures. He thinks every species deserves a chance to join the Empire peacefully. I think he wastes time on creatures not worth the effort. Then let's not waste any more time, Jake said. We reject your terms. The Zenthari officials began talking all at once, their clicking language filling the chamber. Kayla held up one hand, and they fell silent immediately. You reject the Empire's generous offer? She said slowly. Do you understand what that means? It means we're done here, Jake said. He started gathering his materials. Wait. Kayla's voice cut through the room like a blade. Perhaps there is another way to resolve this. Among my people, when negotiations fail, we settle matters through traditional combat. Single combat between representatives. Jake stopped moving. You're challenging me to a fight? I am offering you a chance to prove your species has value, Kayla said. She descended from her platform, moving with liquid grace. If you win, we renegotiate the treaty with terms more favorable to Earth. If I win, you accept our original offer without further complaint. Jake, don't, Lisa whispered urgently. She'll kill you. Look at her. Jake did look. Kayla stood almost 2 feet taller than him. Each of her forearms was thicker than his torso. Her scales were natural armor that could probably stop a knife. She'd been training in combat since birth, raised in a warrior culture that valued strength above all else. You'll be dead in a minute, human, Kayla said. Her smile was full of certainty and contempt. But at least you'll die with honor. More honor than your species has shown so far. The smart move was to refuse, to walk away, to report back to Earth that the Zenthari were impossible to negotiate with, and recommend breaking off contact. Jake knew this. Lisa knew this. Everyone in the room knew this. Jake set down his tablet and looked Kayla directly in the eyes. I accept your challenge. The room erupted in noise again. Lisa grabbed his arm hard enough to hurt, hissing questions and objections. The Zenthari officials seemed split between amusement and shock, but Kayla just smiled wider, already savoring her victory. Excellent, she said. The combat arena will be prepared. We fight in 1 hour. Try not to embarrass yourself too badly, human. Jake nodded once, not trusting himself to speak. He'd just agreed to fight an alien princess in single combat, with Earth's future hanging in the balance. Lisa was going to kill him before Kayla got the chance. Lisa followed Jake down the corridor at a near run, her face red with anger and worry. Are you insane? Do you have any idea what you just did? I accepted a challenge, Jake said calmly. He was already running through combat scenarios in his head, trying to remember everything from his training. You accepted a death sentence. Lisa grabbed his shoulder and spun him around. Jake, she's going to tear you apart. Literally. I've read the reports on Zenthari physiology. They're faster than us, stronger than us, and they have 4 arms. 4. I noticed that, thanks. This isn't funny. Lisa's voice cracked slightly. The mission was to negotiate, not to get yourself killed in some alien gladiator match. Jake stopped walking and faced her directly. The mission was to get Earth a fair treaty. Those terms they offered weren't a treaty. They were an insult. If I'd accepted them, we'd be selling out humanity's future. And if you die in that arena, you won't have a future at all. Maybe, Jake admitted, but maybe I won't die. Maybe I'll surprise them. Lisa stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head. You have a plan, don't you? Please tell me you have some kind of plan. Working on it, Jake said. He started walking again, this time toward their assigned quarters. I need you to pull up everything we have on Zenthari combat techniques. Training methods, tournament footage, anything. You have 53 minutes. Then we better hurry. Their quarters were small but functional, with computer terminals built into the walls. Lisa immediately started searching databases, while Jake changed into more practical clothing. The formal diplomatic uniform wasn't designed for fighting. Got something, Lisa called out. There's footage from the Imperial Games. 3 years ago. Kayla won the championship in her age category. 1. Cardigari won. Cardigari won. Cardigari won. Got something. Jake came over to watch the holographic display. The recording showed a younger Kayla fighting against another Zenthari warrior. The match was brutal and quick. Kayla moved like water, flowing around her opponent's attacks and striking with devastating precision. The fight ended in under 2 minutes, with her opponent unconscious on the arena floor. That's encouraging, Jake said dryly. Wait, there's more. Lisa pulled up additional footage. She's fought in 14 recorded matches. Won all of them. Average fight duration is 3 minutes and 40 seconds. She favors a technique where she uses all 4 arms in rapid combination strikes. Her opponents can't block them all. Jake watched the patterns, trying to memorize them. Kayla was good, no question about that. But she'd also never fought a human before. That might be an advantage if he could figure out how to use it. What about weaknesses? Jake asked. The joints where her lower arms connect to her torso show slightly slower reaction times, Lisa said, highlighting the areas on the display. But we're talking milliseconds. Nothing you could actually exploit unless you're superhuman. What else? Lisa scrolled through more data. Zenthari have incredible burst strength but lower endurance than humans. Their muscle structure is designed for short, intense combat. In their culture, fights that last more than 10 minutes are considered embarrassing. Jake felt a small spark of hope. So, if I can survive the first 10 minutes, she might start to tire? If you can survive, Lisa emphasized. That's a very big if. A chime sounded through the room. A Zenthari voice announced that the arena was prepared and the combatants should proceed to the staging area. Jake took a deep breath. Time to go, Jake. Lisa's voice was softer now. Be careful. Earth needs you to come back. I'll do my best, he promised. The arena was even larger than the negotiation chamber. It was a circular space, about 100 feet across, with a floor made of some material that looked like polished stone. Seating rose up on all sides, already filled with hundreds of Zenthari nobles and officials. Apparently, word had spread quickly about the challenge. Jake entered from one side of the arena. The crowd's reaction was a mix of curious chittering and what sounded like laughter. To them, this was entertainment. A chance to watch their princess demonstrate superiority over a primitive species. Kayla entered from the opposite side, and the crowd's noise shifted to cheers and chants. She'd changed into combat armor that covered her vital areas, but left her arms and legs free for movement. She raised all 4 arms in a salute to the crowd, basking in their adoration. An elderly Zenthari stepped into the center of the arena. He was hunched with age, his scales faded to gray, but he moved with the careful precision of a lifetime warrior. "I am Grenth, Master of Combat for the Imperial House," he announced. His voice carried easily across the arena without any amplification. "I will oversee this challenge. The rules are simple. Combat continues until one fighter yields, is unable to continue, or is killed. No weapons. No outside interference. Honor demands complete effort from both combatants." He looked at Kayla first, then at Jake. "Do you both understand and accept these terms?" "I accept," Kayla said immediately. Jake nodded. "I accept. Then take your positions." Jake walked to the center of the arena, his heart pounding but his mind clear. Kayla approached from the other side, moving with predatory confidence. Up close, she was even more intimidating. The muscle definition in all 4 arms was obvious. Her claws, which Jake had barely noticed before, were each about 2 inches long and looked sharp. "Last chance to surrender, human," Kayla said quietly, just loud enough for him to hear. "I promise to make your death quick if you yield now." "Thanks, but I'll pass," Jake said. "Your choice." Kayla smiled. "Try to last at least a full minute. I have a reputation to maintain." Grenth raised one hand high, then brought it down sharply. "Begin." Kayla exploded forward with speed that shocked Jake even though he'd been expecting it. She closed the distance between them in less than a second, all 4 arms moving in the combination strike pattern he'd seen in the footage. Jake threw himself backward, feeling the wind from her strikes as they missed his face by inches. He rolled, came up in a crouch, and immediately had to dodge again as she pursued without pausing. The crowd roared. They were seeing exactly what they expected. A human desperately trying to avoid the inevitable. Kayla pressed her advantage, using her longer reach to control the space. Every time Jake tried to create distance, she closed it. Every time he looked for an opening to counterattack, she had an arm positioned to block or strike. 30 seconds into the fight, Jake was already breathing hard from the constant movement. Kayla looked like she'd barely started warming up. She feinted with her upper right arm, then struck with her lower left. The blow caught Jake in the ribs and sent him sprawling across the arena floor. Pain exploded through his side. Nothing felt broken, but it hurt to breathe. 40 seconds. Kayla called out, playing to the crowd. "Not bad for a human. Can you make it to a full minute?" Jake pushed himself up, trying to ignore the pain. His instructors back on Earth had taught him that pain was just information. It told you that you were still alive and still in the fight. He changed his approach. Instead of just dodging, he started moving in patterns. Circle left, then right, then back. Force Kayla to adjust constantly. Make her work for every strike. It was working, at least a little. She was still landing hits, but not as cleanly. Jake was learning to read her tells, the tiny shifts in posture that preceded each attack. 1 minute passed, then 2. The crowd's cheering started to falter slightly. This was taking longer than expected. The human was still standing, still moving. He looked hurt and tired, but he hadn't given up. Kayla's expression shifted from amused confidence to focused determination. She increased her pace, throwing more attacks in rapid succession. Jake's world narrowed to just movement and reaction. Dodge, duck, roll, block when dodging wasn't possible. At 3 minutes, he managed his first counterattack. Kayla overextended slightly on a strike with her upper arms, and Jake slipped inside her guard to land a quick jab to her midsection. It was like punching a wall, but he saw her eyes widen in surprise. The crowd went completely silent. "You actually hit me," Kayla said, She sounded more curious than angry. Interesting. She came at him harder, abandoning some of her technique in favor of overwhelming force. Jake gave ground steadily, but he was learning her patterns now. The combat footage had been useful, but nothing compared to actual experience. 5 minutes into the fight, both combatants were sweating. Kayla's breathing had increased noticeably. Jake's ribs screamed with every breath, and he was pretty sure his left shoulder was partially dislocated. But he was still standing, and for the first time since the fight began, he saw doubt flicker across Kayla's face. 10 minutes had passed, and the arena had transformed from a place of certain entertainment into something else entirely. The Zenthari nobles who had come to watch a quick execution now leaned forward in their seats, their earlier laughter replaced by intense focus. Jake's body was a map of pain. His ribs throbbed with each breath. His left shoulder barely functioned. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye, where one of Kayla's strikes had grazed him, but he was still moving, still fighting. And that simple fact was changing everything. Kayla circled him, all 4 arms held in defensive positions now, rather than the aggressive stance she'd started with. Her crimson scales were darker where sweat had formed. Her breathing, which had been controlled and steady at the start, now came in visible gasps. "You should be dead," she said, and Jake couldn't tell if it was admiration or anger in her voice. "Why aren't you dead?" "Stubborn, I guess," Jake replied. He was conserving energy, speaking only when necessary. Every word was oxygen he needed for fighting. Kayla's combat instructor, Old Grenth, watched from the sideline with an expression that might have been approval. He'd tried to warn the princess before the fight began. Jake remembered. She hadn't listened. The princess launched another attack. This time, a sweeping combination that used all 4 arms in a rotating pattern. It was beautiful in its own way. A technique that had probably taken years to master. Jake had seen her use it in the tournament footage. It was designed to be impossible to defend against, because the attacks came from too many angles simultaneously. He didn't try to block it. Instead, he dropped low and rolled forward, passing under her arms and coming up behind her. Before she could turn, he drove his elbow into the joint where her lower left arm connected to her torso. Kayla hissed in pain and spun away. Her lower left arm hung differently now, still functional, but compromised. Jake had finally landed a meaningful strike. The crowd erupted in noise, some cheering for their princess, others making sounds of shock and disbelief. A human had actually injured a member of the royal family in single combat. "You studied our anatomy," Kayla said. "I studied everything I could find," Jake admitted. "Seemed like a good idea before fighting someone who could kill me." "Smart," Kayla said. She adjusted her stance to compensate for the weakened arm. "I did not study yours. I assumed I wouldn't need to." That was arrogant. "Little bit," Jake agreed. They engaged again, but the dynamic had shifted. Kayla was more cautious now, respecting Jake's ability to exploit openings. Jake was tired, but found a second wind born from the realization that he might actually survive this. 15 minutes. The fight had lasted 15 minutes, and neither combatant had yielded. Kayla tried a different approach, using her superior reach to land quick strikes while staying out of Jake's range. It was effective. He took hits to his arms, his shoulders, his legs. Each impact sent fresh waves of pain through his nervous system. But Jake had grown up in old Chicago, in the rough districts where you learned to fight or you didn't survive. He'd been in the Marine Corps, where they taught you that the fight wasn't over until you stopped breathing. He'd served in the Proxima Wars, where human forces had faced impossible odds and won through sheer determination. Pain was familiar. Pain was just part of fighting. He waited for his moment, absorbing punishment but staying focused. Kayla's injured arm was affecting her balance more than she wanted to admit. Every time she threw combinations with her right arms, she unconsciously favored them, leaving her left side fractionally more exposed. 20 minutes into the fight, Jake saw his opening. Kayla committed to a powerful straight strike with her upper right arm, putting her full body weight behind it. Jake sidestepped and caught the arm, using her own momentum to pull her off balance. At the same time, he swept her legs. For the first time in the fight, Princess Kayla Vorthane, of the Zenthari Empire, fell to the ground. The arena went dead silent. In Zenthari culture, forcing a royal to the ground in combat was a profound statement. It said that you were a genuine threat, not just an annoyance to be dismissed. Kayla rolled and came up quickly, but Jake saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Not fear exactly, but recognition. She was no longer fighting a primitive creature from a worthless species. She was fighting a warrior who had earned respect. "I underestimated you," Kayla said. "I won't make that mistake again." She came at him with renewed intensity. But it was different now. Before, she'd been playing with her food. Now she was actually trying to win. The irony wasn't lost on Jake. It had taken 20 minutes of combat for her to take him seriously. They traded blows in a flurry of movement. Jake landed a solid punch to her ribs. Kayla's upper right arm caught him across the jaw, and he tasted blood. His vision blurred for a moment, but he forced himself to stay focused. 25 minutes. Jake's endurance training was the only thing keeping him standing. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters, capable of running prey to exhaustion over hours or even days. That same biology gave him stamina that Zenthari, built for short bursts of overwhelming power, simply didn't possess. Kayla was flagging. Her strikes came slower now, each one requiring visible effort. Her breathing was labored, her scales darker with the exertion. She'd probably never fought for this long in her life. Her opponents usually fell within minutes, but pride wouldn't let her yield. Jake understood that. He felt the same way. They circled each other, both looking for an advantage, both running on reserves they didn't know they had. "Why do you keep fighting?" Kayla asked between breaths. "You're hurt. You're tired. You could yield with honor. No one would blame you." "Could ask you the same question," Jake replied. "I am a princess of the Empire. I cannot yield to an outsider. It would shame my family. I'm fighting for my whole species," Jake said. "Can't really afford to lose." Kayla actually smiled at that, a genuine expression, rather than the condescending smirk from earlier. "We are both trapped by duty." Then, looks like it, 30 minutes had passed. In the crowd, Zenthari officials were having urgent conversations. This had gone far beyond anyone's expectations. Some were calling for the fight to be stopped, declaring it an honorable draw. Others insisted that tradition demanded a clear victor. Old Grenth made no move to intervene. He simply watched, his ancient eyes missing nothing. Kayla attempted one final devastating combination, the same sequence that had won her the Imperial Championship. She'd used it in the footage Jake had studied. Upper left and upper right together, then lower right, then lower left, then all four in a crushing simultaneous strike. Jake had been waiting for it the entire fight. He'd seen her default to this pattern when she was tired or frustrated. It was her signature move, the technique she trusted most. He knew exactly how to counter it. As her upper arms came in, he dropped and rolled left. The lower right arm swung through empty air where he'd been standing. Before she could adjust, he came up inside her guard and drove a precise strike into the joint of her upper right shoulder, the same technique that had worked on her lower left arm. The princess's dominant striking arm went partially numb. She stumbled, off balance, and compromised. Jake could have pressed the advantage. Could have swept her legs again, put her on the ground, maybe even ended the fight. But something stopped him. Maybe it was respect for her determination. Maybe it was exhaustion affecting his judgment. Maybe it was the understanding that sometimes winning wasn't about destroying your opponent. He stepped back, giving her space to recover. Kayla straightened, both her left arms now functioning at reduced capacity. She looked at Jake with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You could have finished it," she said. "Fight's not over yet," Jake replied. "No," Kayla agreed. "But it will be soon." She was right. They were both running on fumes now. The next exchange would likely be the last. They moved toward each other one final time, Two warriors who had started as diplomat and princess, who had become something else through combat. Whatever happened next would determine not just the outcome of this fight, but possibly the future of human-Xanthari relations. Jake set his stance, ignoring his screaming muscles and battered body. Kayla raised her arms, compensating for her injuries with practiced skill, and then they clashed. The final exchange was not the dramatic clash that the Xanthari audience expected. There were no spectacular moves or devastating strikes. It was simply two exhausted fighters giving everything they had left. Kayla threw a combination with her two functioning arms. Jake blocked one strike and absorbed the other against his already bruised ribs. He countered with a quick series of body shots, each one landing with less force than he intended, but still having an effect. They separated, both breathing so hard they could barely stand. Sweat dripped from Jake's face, mixing with blood from the cut above his eye. Kayla's scales had lost their brilliant sheen, dulled by exertion and damage. 35 minutes had passed since the fight began. In the arena seating, even the most bloodthirsty nobles had stopped cheering. This had transcended entertainment. They were witnessing something rare. Two warriors pushed beyond their limits, refusing to quit. Jake's vision swam. His legs felt like they were made of rubber. He'd taken so many hits that he'd lost count of his injuries. But some deep part of him, the part that had survived gang fights as a kid and alien ambushes as a Marine, simply would not let him fall. Kayla wasn't in much better shape. Her injured arms hung awkwardly. Her breathing came in ragged gasps. But royal pride kept her upright, kept her fighting even as her body begged her to stop. They came together again, moving in what felt like slow motion. Jake threw a punch that Kayla partially blocked. She struck back with her upper right arm, catching him in the shoulder and spinning him halfway around. He used the momentum to deliver a back elbow that connected with her midsection. She grunted in pain but grabbed his arm with two of her hands, trying to use her superior strength to control him. Jake twisted, breaking her grip through technique rather than power. One of his instructors had once told him that strength could be overcome by leverage and timing. He'd never believed it more than at this moment. They separated again. Both warriors stood swaying, barely able to maintain their balance. "You should have fallen by now," Kayla said. Her voice was hoarse. "How are you still standing?" "Humans are good at not dying," Jake replied. Speaking took effort he couldn't really spare. "It's kind of our thing." "I'm beginning to understand that." Kayla lowered her arms slightly, a gesture that might have been respect or might have been exhaustion. "The intelligence reports said your species fought in something called the Proxima Wars. I didn't bother reading them. Tell me what happened." Jake knew what she was doing, trying to buy time to recover. He needed the rest too. So he answered, "Colony on Proxima got attacked by an automated defense system from a dead civilization. The machines didn't negotiate, didn't communicate, just killed anything that moved. How did you survive?" "We didn't run, couldn't. The colony had kids, families. So we fought." Jake wiped blood from his eye. "Fought for 3 years with weapons that barely scratched them. Lost thousands of people. But we learned, adapted, found their weaknesses. Eventually, we won." Kayla listened, her breathing starting to slow slightly. "Against an enemy with superior technology?" "Yeah. And you never considered surrender?" "Not really our style," Jake said. "Humans are stubborn that way. The universe keeps trying to kill us, and we keep deciding to survive instead." Something shifted in Kayla's expression. Understanding, maybe, or recognition of a truth she'd never considered before. "Your species has been fighting for survival since before you reached the stars." "Since before we had fire," Jake confirmed. "Predators tried to eat us. Disease tried to kill us. We fought each other constantly. Then we reached space and found out the galaxy wasn't any friendlier. But here we are." "Still standing," Kayla said quietly. "Still standing," Jake agreed. They looked at each other across the arena, and something unspoken passed between them. This wasn't about territory or treaties anymore. It was about two individuals who had found mutual respect through combat. "I have never fought anyone like you," Kayla said. "In all my matches, all my training, I've never faced an opponent who simply refused to accept defeat." "That's because your people are strong," Jake said. "You usually win quickly. You've never had to learn to fight when everything looks hopeless." "And humans have? Every day of our existence." Kayla nodded slowly. She straightened up, preparing herself. "Then let us finish this. You have earned a proper ending to our combat." Jake raised his fists again, his battered body protesting every movement. "Agreed." But before either could move, old Grenth stepped into the arena. The combat master moved between them, holding up one hand. "Enough," he said. His voice carried authority that even the princess couldn't ignore. "This combat has exceeded all reasonable duration. Both fighters have demonstrated exceptional skill and determination. To continue would serve no purpose except to cause permanent injury or death." "The fight isn't finished," Kayla protested. "There is no victor." "On the contrary," Grenth said. "There are two victors. You have both won something more valuable than this challenge. You have won understanding." He turned to address the crowd, his voice amplifying across the arena. "I declare this combat concluded with honor to both participants. Princess Kayla Vorthane has defended the Empire's reputation with skill and courage. Commander Jake Morrison has proven that humanity is worthy of respect and fair treatment." The crowd erupted in a mix of reactions. Some cheered, others argued. A few sat in stunned silence. Grenth ignored them all and looked at Jake. "You have fought well, human. Better than I expected. I have trained warriors for 6 decades, and I have rarely seen such determination." "Thank you," Jake managed. Now that the fight was over, the adrenaline that had been sustaining him began to fade. His legs nearly buckled. Lisa appeared at his side, seeming to materialize out of nowhere. She got under his good shoulder and supported his weight. "You crazy, magnificent idiot," she whispered. "I can't believe you survived." Kayla stood alone for a moment, her forearms hanging at her sides, her expression complex. Then, she walked across the arena to where Jake stood. "I said you would be dead in a minute," she said. "I remember. I was wrong." She held out her upper right hand in what Jake recognized as a gesture of respect among Zenthari warriors. "You have taught me an important lesson today, Jake Morrison. I will not forget it." Jake shook her hand, even though the grip sent pain shooting through his arm. "You're a hell of a fighter, princess. Just needed to learn that strength isn't everything, apparently." Kayla released his hand and stepped back. "We will speak again tomorrow, after you have received medical treatment. The treaty negotiations will resume, but this time I will listen to what humanity has to offer." She turned and walked from the arena, her posture still regal despite her injuries. The crowd parted for her, their earlier certainty replaced by confused respect. Jake let Lisa guide him toward the exit. Medical personnel rushed forward with equipment designed for Zenthari physiology, looking uncertain about how to treat a human. "I've got him," Lisa said firmly. "Just point us to a medical bay." As they left the arena, Jake looked back one time. Grenth stood in the center of the combat floor, watching them go. The old warrior gave a small nod that might have been approval. Jake nodded back. Then Lisa was leading him through corridors toward medical help, talking the entire time about how reckless and brave and stupid he'd been. He barely heard her. His mind was already moving to the next challenge, convincing the Zenthari Empire that humanity deserved a real partnership, not just survival. But he'd worry about that tomorrow. Right now, he just needed to not die from his injuries. After all, he'd promised Kayla he'd be there for the new negotiations. And Jake Morrison always kept his promises. Jake woke up in a medical bay that was clearly designed for species much larger than humans. The bed was enormous. The ceiling was at least 15 feet high, and all the equipment around him looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Which, he supposed, it did, from Earth's perspective. "You're awake," Lisa said from a chair beside the bed. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept at all. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Jake said. His voice came out rough. "Several trucks, actually. Maybe a whole convoy. 3 cracked ribs, dislocated shoulder that the doctors put back in place, severe bruising across 60% of your body, mild concussion, and about 20 minor cuts and scrapes." Lisa read from a tablet. The Zenthari medical team was fascinated. Apparently, human bone structure is different enough from theirs that they had to call in a xenobiology specialist. Jake tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain flared through his entire torso. "How long was I out?" 18 hours. The doctors gave you something to help you sleep. Your body needed time to start healing." Lisa leaned forward. "Jake, the footage of your fight has spread across the entire station. Every species here has seen it. You're famous." "Great," Jake muttered. "Just what I wanted. I'm serious." The Zenthari are shocked. Some of them are calling you the stubborn warrior. Others are using a word that translates roughly to unkillable. You changed their entire perception of humanity in 40 minutes. Before Jake could respond, the door to the medical bay opened. Princess Kayla entered, moving carefully. She wore simpler clothing than before, and Jake could see bandages on her lower arms where they connected to her torso. "Commander Morrison," she said formally. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all, Your Highness," Jake said. Lisa stood up quickly and bowed. Kayla waved the gesture away. "Please, no formality. After yesterday, I think we can speak as equals." Kayla pulled up a chair, sized for Zenthari but making do. "I came to see how you were recovering." "Been better," Jake admitted. "But I'll live." "Yes, you will. That seems to be a talent of yours." Kayla's expression was thoughtful. "I have spent the last day reviewing footage of our combat and thinking about what happened. I also read the intelligence reports on humanity that I previously ignored. The Proxima Wars. The colony struggles. Your species' entire history. It was enlightening." "Changed your opinion of us?" Jake asked. "Completely." Kayla leaned back in the chair. "I see now that the Empire has been making a fundamental error in how we evaluate other species. We measure them by our own standards. Physical strength, military power, technological advancement. But those metrics don't capture what makes a species truly formidable." End quote. "And what's that?" "The refusal to quit," Kayla said simply. "The ability to face impossible situations and find a way through them anyway. Humans have that quality in abundance. You proved it yesterday." Lisa glanced between them, clearly trying to figure out where this conversation was going. Kayla continued. "I spoke with my father, the Emperor, last night. I showed him the combat footage and explained what I had learned. He has agreed to renegotiate the treaty with terms that reflect humanity as a genuine partner rather than a subordinate species." Jake felt a surge of hope mixed with caution. "What kind of terms?" "Fair ones," Kayla said. "Joint mining operations in the asteroid fields, with profits shared equally. Mutual access to trading posts and technology exchange programs. A defense pact where both our species commit to mutual protection. And, most importantly, recognition of Earth's sovereignty over its own territory." "That's a significant change from the original offer," Jake said carefully. "The original offer was an insult," Kayla admitted. "I see that now. It was based on arrogance and ignorance. This new treaty treats humanity with the respect you deserve." Lisa looked like she wanted to jump up and cheer, but was trying to maintain professional composure. Jake understood the feeling. This was everything Earth had hoped for, and more. "There's one condition," Kayla added. The Emperor wants to establish a joint military training program between our species. Zenthari soldiers would learn human tactics and endurance techniques. Human soldiers would learn Zenthari combat methods and strategy. The program would be based here, on the Imperial Station. And who would run this program? Jake asked. Though he had a feeling he already knew the answer. You would command the human contingent, Kayla said. If you're willing, I would command the Zenthari forces. We would work together to create something new. Warriors who combine the best of both our species. Jake looked at Lisa, who nodded almost imperceptibly. This was an incredible opportunity for Earth. A chance to build genuine ties with one of the galaxy's major powers. I accept, Jake said. Assuming Earth Command approves, of course. They will, Kayla said with confidence. Your superiors would be foolish to reject this opportunity. And I suspect after yesterday, they understand that you can handle difficult situations. She stood, preparing to leave. Rest and recover, Jake Morrison. We have much work ahead of us. The treaty negotiations will take several weeks to finalize. Use that time to heal. When we begin the training program, I expect you at full strength. I'll be ready, Jake promised. Kayla smiled, a genuine expression of warmth rather than the cold superiority from their first meeting. I know you will. Humans are very good at not dying. After all. After she left, Lisa finally let her composure break. Do you realize what just happened? You just secured Earth's future in the galactic community. We're going to be partners with the Zenthari Empire. Real partners. One fight at a time, Jake said. We still have to make it work. We will, Lisa said confidently. If you can survive 40 minutes against an alien warrior princess, we can handle treaty negotiations. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake recovered while the treaty details were hammered out. Representatives from Earth arrived, including Admiral Linda Hayes, who commanded Earth's defense fleet. She was a stern woman in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Commander Morrison, she said when they finally met in person. You've caused quite a stir back home. Half the planet thinks you're a hero. The other half thinks you're insane for accepting that challenge. Which half are you in, Admiral? Jake asked. Both, Hayes said dryly. But mostly the hero side. You got us the treaty we needed. The Joint Chiefs are thrilled. You're being promoted to captain and given command of the training program. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me yet. This assignment is going to be harder than fighting the princess. You'll be working with alien soldiers who are stronger and faster than humans. You'll need to prove every single day that we deserve to be their equals. I understand. Hayes studied him for a moment. I think you do. That's why I approved your assignment. Good luck, Captain Morrison. Earth is counting on you. The treaty signing ceremony was held in the main assembly hall of the Imperial Station. Representatives from dozens of species attended, along with news feeds broadcasting across the galaxy. The Zenthari Emperor himself presided, a massive figure even by his species standards, with scales of deep gold. Kayla stood beside her father in full royal regalia. She caught Jake's eye across the hall and gave a small nod of acknowledgement. The Emperor spoke in his native language, the words translated for the various species present. Today marks a new chapter in the Empire's history. We welcome humanity, not as subjects, but as allies. They have proven their worth through courage and determination. Let this treaty stand as evidence that strength comes in many forms. Jake and Admiral Hayes signed for Earth. The Emperor and Kayla signed for the Zenthari Empire. The assembled species witnessed and recorded it all. As the ceremony concluded, Grenth approached Jake. The old combat master moved slowly, but with purpose. Captain Morrison, he said. I wanted to speak with you before the celebrations begin. Master Grenth, Jake replied respectfully. I have trained warriors for 60 years, Grenth said. I have seen thousands of fights. What you did in that arena was exceptional. Not because of your technique, though that was adequate, but because of your spirit. You demonstrated a truth that many Zenthari have forgotten, that the strongest weapon is the refusal to surrender. I had good motivation, Jake said. My whole species was watching. Perhaps. But I think you would have fought the same way even without that pressure. It is simply who you are. Grenth reached into his robes and pulled out a small metal pin shaped like a spiral. This is the mark of the warrior's path. It is given only to those who have shown true understanding of combat. I give it to you now. Reasontated stated, Mark of the warrior's path. Jake accepted the pin, feeling the weight of the honor. Thank you, Master Grenth. I'll wear it with pride. See that you do. And remember, the fight is never truly over. There will always be new challenges, new battles. But I believe you and Princess Kayla will face them well together. End quote. The Rever won. End quote. End quote. The old warrior bowed slightly and walked away, leaving Jake holding the pin. Lisa appeared at his side. What was that about? Recognition, Jake said. And a reminder that we've got a lot of work ahead. We can handle it, Lisa said confidently. After all, we're human. Being stubborn is what we do best. Jake laughed, the sound feeling good after weeks of stress and pain. Yeah, I guess it is. Across the hall, Kayla watched them with an expression of approval. Tomorrow they would begin the hard work of building the training program and strengthening the alliance between their species. There would be challenges, conflicts, and probably more than a few fights. But Jake had learned something important from his duel with the princess. Sometimes, the best way to earn respect wasn't through superior strength or technology. Sometimes, you just had to show up, refuse to quit, and prove that you belonged. Humanity had done that. And they were just getting started. The galaxy had underestimated humans for the last time. From now on, when species heard about Earth, they wouldn't think of a primitive backwater. They would think of the people who simply refused to die, who turned 40 minutes of combat into a treaty that changed everything. They would think of warriors like Jake Morrison, who heard, "You'll be dead in a minute," and decided to prove them wrong. And maybe, just maybe, they would think twice before dismissing humanity again.